The Carrington Event, the biggest solar storm in recorded history. By Amethyst Gray. With Abby Gray. What is so significant about this event? The Carrington Event 1859 was the most significant geomagnetic storm in recorded history. It peaked at the very beginning of September 1 St. 2nd 1859 during the 10th solar cycle, December 1855 to March 1867. During that cycle, the maximum number of sunspots was 186. Aurorae. Aurorae were seen around the world, even over the Caribbean. Over the Rocky Mountains, the aurora was so bright that its glow awoke gold miners who began preparing breakfast because they thought it was morning. Telegraph systems. Telegraph systems all over Europe and North America failed. Telegraph pylons threw sparks, and telegraph paper spontaneously caught fire. Some telegraph systems appeared to continue sending and receiving despite being disconnected from their power supplies. Richard Carrington. On September 1, 1859, Richard Carrington and Richard Hodgson independently observed the first solar flare. Richard Christopher Carrington, 1826–1875, was an English amateur astronomer whose astronomical observations demonstrated the existence of solar flares and their apparent electrical influence upon the Earth and its aurorae. His 1863 observational sunspot records revealed the Sun's differential rotation. The Great Storm, solar tempest of 1859. Coronal mass ejection. The geomagnetic storm was most likely the result of a coronal mass ejection, CME, from the Sun colliding with the Earth's magnetosphere. It was associated with a very bright solar flare recorded on 1 September 1859. Coronal mass ejection. Typical CMEs take several days to arrive on Earth. But it is believed that the relatively high speed of this particular CME was made possible by a prior CME that cleared the way on 29 August, itself creating aurorae. The solar maximum. The Carrington event occurred a few months before the solar maximum, a period of elevated solar activity of solar cycle 10. Estimates of the storm strength range from -0.80 to -1.75 microtesla. The human side of the Carrington event. By Abby Gray. If it happened today, no electric or oil-based transport would work. Cars, buses, trains, etc., elevators would not open, you could be stuck in one. Phones won't work, not helpful for an emergency. Electric hospital equipment won't work, such as resuscitation or breathing equipment. Life support machines won't work. Cameras, watches and clocks won't work. How would people likely react? Negatives: panic, confusion, anger, violence, crime, aggression, bullying, bickering, arguing. Positives: cooperation, teamwork, compassion, kindness, community, social interaction. Not the end of the world. You could still do the following: paddle boating across the English Channel, walk the dog, bicycling or scooter across the roads, longer journeys but could be worth the effort. Read paperbacks, magazines, letter. The recent past. March 1989, aurorae and mass disruption. The storm began on Earth with extremely intense auroras at the poles. The aurora could be seen as far south as Texas and Florida. Substantial communications blackouts occurred. Some satellites in polar orbits lost control for several hours. This storm was only a fraction of the size of the Carrington event. March 1989, Quebec power blackout. Just after 2:44 a.m. on March 13, the currents found a weakness in the electrical power grid of Quebec. In less than 2 minutes, the entire Quebec power grid lost power. During the 12-hour blackout that followed, millions suddenly found themselves in dark office buildings and underground pedestrian tunnels and stopped lifts. Most people woke up in cold homes for breakfast. The blackout also closed schools and businesses. In the nearby USA, the grid systems just managed to cope with the sudden losses. Power systems in areas of igneous rock are most vulnerable to the effects of intense geomagnetic activity because the high resistance of the rock encourages geomagnetically induced currents to flow in the power transmission lines situated above the rock. Halloween storms of 2003. The Halloween solar storms were a series of solar storms involving solar flares and coronal mass ejections that occurred from mid-October to early November 2003, peaking around October 28 to 29. This series of storms generated the largest solar flare ever recorded by the GOES system, modeled as Strana's X45, initially estimated at X28 due to the saturation of GOES detectors. 2003 Halloween solar storms. During the height of the solar activity, more than half of the deep space and near-Earth space science missions experienced the effects. The Solar and Heliospheric Observatory, SOHO, satellite failed temporarily. NASA's Advanced Composition Explorer, ACE, satellite experienced damage, and instruments aboard many spacecraft had to be shut down temporarily. These storms were so powerful they created aurora that could be seen as far south as Florida. One of the solar storms was compared by some scientists in its intensity to the Carrington Event. These events occurred during solar cycle 23, approximately 3 years after its peak in 2000, marked by another occurrence of solar activity known as the Bastille Day event. Conclusion: it's when native, an event comparable to the Carrington Event, and worse, will happen, we just don't know when. If we are as reliant upon our grid system when it does, we will lose all our communications, and our transport will be severely affected along with the flow of goods. We have 3 days' supply in most shops. Power outages could last for months or years as wires and substations short out. For our civilization it could be good night Vienna. References. Pause here to see the references. Abby Gray is usually game for new experiences and meeting people from different backgrounds, countries and accents. She likes to have a plan B for most things, and the Carrington Event is no exception. You can be sure that she has a stock of books ready for when the lights go out. I am Amethyst Gray, but you may know me better as Amy. I have always been interested in Atlantis and hidden history. I live in Wiltshire near Avebury, Silbury Hill and 10 miles from Stonehenge. By day, I am an IT consultant with blue-chip companies. I am also a physics graduate turned author, Reiki and past/future life practitioner. I would describe myself as a discerning believer. I am a member of and am a certified paranormal investigator. I first delivered a short version of this talk at the Edinburgh Fortean Society in July 2018.